So today I'm going to present an overview of a cosmology that I've been developing entitled the Existence Framework. The framework is an attempt to combine scientific and spiritual cosmologies into a single vision, a single framework. And the framework spans the entire evolution of the universe, from its creation to human consciousness to spiritual experience. It attempts to answer questions that science has not yet been able to answer, including what caused the Big Bang, how to reconcile general relativity with quantum mechanics, how does consciousness arise in the human brain, and questions regarding spiritual experience, such as if the mystic experience is an illusion, what evolutionary advantage does it offer? And what are the dynamics of spiritual experience, if indeed they are real? The framework starts with a spiritual cosmology, merges it with theories of physics, including the Big Bang theory and general relativity. Then a spiritual psychology is merged with concepts from neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and computer science. Using spiritual revelations regarding the transcendent reality, they are merged with psychology and evolutionary biology. And the result are three theories. There's a theory of quantum gravity, a theory of human consciousness, and a theory regarding spiritual experience. The common theme throughout is something I refer to as existence. Existence is a singular attribute of the transcendent infinite reality, I believe, and it serves as the core of the new theories that I'm creating. All these theories are also interconnected. The theory of quantum gravity is used in the theory of consciousness, and the theory of consciousness is used in the theory of spiritual dynamics. Personally, I rely upon the cosmology of a modern-day spiritual master who I've been following for many years. I believe he has the most clear expressions of spiritual cosmology that I am familiar with. His cosmology is a reinstatement of ancient truths found in spiritual traditions, such as Vedantaism, Sufism, and others, but told from a modern-day perspective. Meher Baba describes the transcendent reality, the reality beyond the universe, as being one infinite eternal existence in which absolute oneness prevails. Nothing else exists. Creation of the universe begins with an impulse within the infinite existence to acquire consciousness, knowledge of itself. In order to know itself, it contrasts itself to what it is not. And as there are no other things existing to contrast itself to, the only thing that it can contrast itself to is absolute non-existence or nothingness. When the infinite existence contrasts itself to absolute non-existence, the infinite existence immediately acquires consciousness, while non-existence remains unconscious. But the nothing, the non-existence, takes on a reality of its own, imbibing all the attributes of the original infinite existence. And so it also seeks to seek consciousness and replicates the creation process. And in doing so, it creates innumerable more non-existence or drops of non-existence. And according to Meher Baba's cosmology, each of these points is a soul, an individual soul, which will go on to evolve its own consciousness. Now, starting with this premise of this Meher Baba's spiritual cosmology, I extend it by proposing that each soul has its first manifestation in the universe in the form of what I call existence, or I call existence particle or quantum of existence. So the question is, how do these existence particles manifest in the physical universe? And for that, I'm going to turn to physics. And one of the things I find interesting is that Meher Baba's cosmology dovetails with the Big Bang theory, and particularly the aspect of singularity, which is part of the Big Bang theory. Meher Baba states that the entire universe emerges from this transcendent state through what he calls an own point, a finite point of non-existence. What's interesting is that the own point is identical in concept to a singularity. So now what's a singularity? According to Meher Baba's theory, a singularity is the most finite point from which the entire universe emerges. At the time of the Big Bang, the entire universe, all the galaxies of the universe, all space and time, everything is shrunken in size to a point smaller than an electron. This is all determined through Einstein's theories of general relativity. And his theories actually indicate that singularities occur in two places, at the beginning of the universe and inside of black holes. At both points, his equations result in what's known as infinite space-time warping. Space-time warping causes gravity, and that's infinite space-time warping would be the most extreme gravity, and that's why black holes are black holes, because its gravity is so intense, no light can come out. And in case of extreme singularity, everything just reduces to a point of non-existence. In my framework, I propose that the time of the Big Bang, time, space, energy, and matter emerge into existence from a singularity. And at a black hole singularity, space, time, matter, and energy vanish from existence. The notion of space, time, and matter and energy entering existence, or the entering the universe and vanishing from the universe, it's a radical proposition. I recognize that. It goes against the conservation of matter and energy. However, there's actually a precedent established in physics of virtual particles entering and exiting from existence. And so this notion might not actually be so far-fetched. And I propose that existence is a major component of the universe, just as time, space, energy, and matter are major components. Existence is fundamental. Nothing can exist without existence. We live in a notion of existence, but we don't realize it because we never experience non-existence. We're like fish who don't know what water is because they've never been outside water. So if existence is a major component of the universe, what are its properties? And how does it interact with other properties of the universe, particularly time and space? So to get a handle on that, I turn to general relativity and quantum mechanics, and in particular, the problem of how to reconcile general relativity with quantum mechanics. And I believe that the introduction of another aspect of the universe, existence, can help solve that longstanding problem of reconciling general relativity and quantum mechanics. To do this, I researched how major breakthroughs in physics came about in the past. And that historical perspective and analysis revealed that basic principles common to major breakthroughs. Well, I found three major principles. I found the equivalence principle, the hierarchical principle, and the quantum principle. Let's look at the first principle, the equivalence principle. The notion of that principle is, and it's found in most of these major breakthroughs, or all of them actually, that when it establishes an equivalence between two previously unrelated phenomenon. For example, Newton established an equivalence between the force acting on objects causing it to fall to the earth and the force causing planets to revolve around the sun. This led to his theory of gravity. Faraday worked with an equivalence between electricity and magnetism, and Maxwell established an equivalence between electricity, magnetism, and light, which led to his equations of electromagnetism. Einstein had a bunch of equivalences. He established an equivalence between the force acting on accelerating bodies and the gravitational force, which led to his theory of general relativity. He also found an equivalence between matter and energy, as we know through the formula E equals mc squared. And he found an equivalence between space and time, creating the space-time continuum. So now the second principle is the hierarchical principle. It states that entities previously assumed to be elementary are actually comprised of something more elementary. For example, atoms were thought to be elementary until it was discovered that they are comprised of electrons, protons, and neutrons. And protons were thought to be elementary until it was discovered that they are comprised of quarks. And the final principle that I'll use is the quantum principle, which states that quantities that were once considered continuous are actually discrete, occurring in quantum packets. And the example is Einstein's photoelectric effect revealed that energy that was thought to be continuous actually occurs in quantized packets called photons. And his discovery led to the formation of quantum mechanics. So this problem of bridging general relativity with quantum mechanics has challenged science and physics for over 100 years. General relativity is a theory of gravity, and so it deals with space-time, as space-time dynamics determine gravity. Quantum mechanics describes how matter and energy relate through the standard model. So what is thought is a theory of quantum gravity, which would explain the force of gravity in quantum terms, just like all the other forces of energy are explained by quantum mechanics. There have been many attempts. Einstein tried with his unified field theory. There is string theory, loop quantum gravity. All these attempts have not really yet succeeded in rectifying general relativity and quantum mechanics. So I believe the introduction of another item to the stratum of the universe, in this case existence, can solve the problem. And the first step is to apply the equivalence principle by establishing an equivalence between space-time and energy and matter. Now, how might that equivalent come about? Well, I believe the equivalence is found by applying the second principle, the hierarchical principle. I suggest the hierarchical arrangement in which time and space are the actual substance of energy and matter. And the third step is to apply the quantum principle. That is to say that time and space are not continuous, but rather are comprised of discrete items, they have a substance. So now the question is, what is the substance of space-time? And I propose that it's existence. Existence is the substance of time. And in fact, in the hierarchical arrangement, existence is the underlying structure of everything. And furthermore, just as matter and energy are quantized, so too is existence. And I refer to it, that quantum, as an existence particle. Because existence particles are the composition of time and space, they themselves can have no mass, exert no force, consume no space, nor endure for any length of time. Existence particles enter into the universe and then immediately vanish before any time can elapse, and they don't take up any space. An existence particle only contains information. It's like a bit in a computer. It's either on or it's off. It either exists or does not exist. An existence particle could also be considered not just a quantum of existence, but it could also be considered a quantum of consciousness, or a quantum of information, or even a quantum of love. All these different descriptions are, at this level of the universe, are really the same, because everything is still merged at this point in the universe. So now, where does the existence particles emerge from? Well, I propose that they are the substance which emerges from the infinite transcendent reality when the contrast between infinite existence and absolute non-existence occurs. That is, the formation of innumerable existence particles. According to Mayor Bob's cosmology, these are souls, but this is the first manifestation in the evolution of the universe of a soul. So now the question is, how does time form from existence? Because we have this hierarchical arrangement. Existence forms time, time forms space, space-time or fluctuations of space-time become matter, matter is condensed energy. I propose that there's an intrinsic desire on the part of existence particles to regain the original state of unity, that regain the state of infinite existence. An existence particle bonds with a partner, a just vanished existence particle, and in a bonded pair, one particle plays the role of infinite existence and the other plays the role of non-existence. They mimic or replicate that original creation process. And since an existence particle can only last for not even a moment, they immediately flip, and the particle comes into existence, and the particle that was existing goes into non-existence. And they continue to flip, and they flip indefinitely. Each flip becomes, between existence and non-existence, represents a moment of time, a Planck moment, the smallest, most discrete amount of time that's possible in the universe. Innumerable moments of time are created, but there's yet no flow of time at this stage in the evolution of the universe. There's no past, present, or future yet established. Time strings form from individual moments of time, and time is existence flowing from past to present to future. And then I propose that space is made up of matrices of time strings. I won't go into great detail, but I want to show how this basic structure form a theory of quantum gravity. I won't go into detail on this slide either, but the important point is that to show that space can flow through space, just like currents of water can flow through flow through an ocean. You can have a current within the ocean. So too, I'm proposing that space can flow through space. And it is the flowing of space that causes gravity. Slightly different way of explaining gravity than general relativity, but I actually believe it's the same notion. I propose that space flows into voids, or something similar to a black hole, inside particles of mass. Space-time will vanish inside of these particles. And this flow warps space-time, as described by general relativity. So although I'm not a physicist, I've done some math, and I have been able to demonstrate that these concepts are in accord with Newton's gravitational equations and Schwarzschild's radius equations. Schwarzschild's equations were simplified equations of Einstein's much more difficult equations of general relativity. So, and it also explains time dilation and gravitational fields. So to understand, get back to what time dilation basically means, the slowing down of time in fields of gravity. So we need to understand why that happens. We look at how photons travel in space, and what I propose that the speed of light is constant because photons move along a time string, which forms space, one Planck length per Planck moment, which is one existence particle per moment. That is, they move from one existence particle to the next existence particle in these time strings. And they will do that no matter how dense space-time is. So if you notice, right in the towards the where that void is in the middle, space-time is flowing, and you can see that the density is quite great. The existence particles are quite close together, whereas further away in the less dense area, the existence particles are further apart. To travel the same amount of space distance, and a photon will have to traverse more existence particles, and so it will take longer, and therefore that accounts for why time slows down. Okay, so that was the quantum theory in very brief. It has a lot more detail to it than what I'm able to give in this overview. So now let's turn to human consciousness. Neuroscience is unable to explain how the brain generates consciousness. Now, whereas other mental phenomena such as seeing, hearing, and feeling have physical correlates. For example, we see light with our eyes, and we also observe and measure light with instruments such as cameras. So there's a physical correlate for light, what we see. Likewise, we hear sound waves with our ears, which we can also measure by instruments such as microphones. But there's no way to directly observe consciousness. In other words, there are no physical correlates. So something new must be added to physics in order to explain consciousness. And of course, my suggestion is existence. Now, although physics is unable to directly observe consciousness, in-depth systematic exploration of the mind through meditation can lead to a direct experience, although a subjective experience. And the ultimate experience of consciousness that has been spoken about throughout the times, particularly in Eastern religions, is referred to as nirvana, or realization. Now, Meher Baba describes nirvana as a state in which the universe ceases to exist for the one who is experiencing it, and only consciousness remains. In this state, consciousness is and nothing else is. This pure state of consciousness informs us as to the nature of consciousness, awareness of self. In my definition, I define consciousness as awareness of self-existence. So in order to explain consciousness, we must explain self, and we must explain existence. So it focuses on two areas. In my framework, I focus on two areas. One is, how does the self form in the human mind? And the other is, what is the nature of existence and its role in the universe, which the quantum theory that we just went through already has explained. And so it includes a cognitive model of the mind and the new physics, which has existence as being the fundamental aspect. So now what about the self? Well, the self must integrate all of the mind's many independent processes. We know from neuroscience that the brain has motor, olfactory, visual, and auditory, and other specialized areas working pretty independently. The self has to integrate these various aspects so that you and I have one unified, complete experience. Furthermore, each of the brain's systems have subsystems. Thus, the brain is hierarchically structured. And here we have the visual system. We can see that V1 through V5 are the different aspects of the visual system. The sense of self includes all of these subsystems. In other words, the mind is hierarchically integrated. Information flows up from lower levels, from sensory input up to the higher levels, and then back down. And this cycle continually repeats. And there's also cross communication between the various subsystems, so it's a very complex structure. So I establish a bridge between this neuroscience psychological model of the mind with Meher Baba's spiritual explanations of the mind, which is also hierarchical in nature and explains the formation of the sense of self as being the ego, the integrator of experience. The structure of the mind which Meher Baba reveals is based upon 7 higher levels of consciousness, and these higher levels operate unconsciously in normal human activity, but are experienced by those who have advanced higher spiritual states of consciousness. At lower levels of the hierarchy is normal human consciousness, and higher levels are attained through spiritual advancement. And during advancement, one's consciousness transforms, first from matter into energy, and then with greater advancement, transforms from energy into mental experiences. And the mental realm contains mental impressions, or in modern day terminology, I would refer to them as algorithms. These mental impressions are the impressions of experience, the memories of experiences, and these impressions become the algorithms which control energetic desires, which in turn activate physical actions. Information flows up the hierarchy from the senses to the mental realm and then back down as the mental algorithms control desires and actions. So this is the brief description of the cognitive model. So now the question is, how does this self, defined by the cognitive model, link with existence? So I propose that just as the eye can sense photons, the brain as an entire organ can sense existence particles. Neuroscience tends to look for portions of the brain responsible for consciousness. But I believe consciousness is a result of the entire brain, or maybe perhaps just the entire cortex's activity. The brain's functions as one whole integrated organ when all the various areas are integrated through the formation of the sense of self. Now, how might the formation of the sense of self lead to the perceiving of existence? Well, I think brainwaves might provide a clue because they reveal levels of consciousness. For example, when asleep, unconscious, brainwaves are very slow. When awake, they are faster, and when you're highly active, they are at the highest frequency. Now, higher frequency brainwaves would indicate more interconnected neural activity. In other words, brainwaves are fastest when the sense of self is at its greatest formation. I propose, and I don't know exactly how this would come about, but I propose that the very dense interconnected complex of networks within the human cortex create a unique electronic field of waves that is not found anywhere else in nature because of the tremendous interconnectivity of neurons in the cortex. It's something unique, not found anywhere else. And I propose that this highly integrated sense of self and its corresponding electronic energy field creates a void in which existence can emerge. And it's a void in space-time, and it's a void from which existence particles can emerge, just like they did at the moment of the Big Bang. So the self perceives the emerging existence particles, and the result is consciousness. Self becomes aware of existence. The self becomes aware of its own existence. So the human brain replicates the original contrast between infinite existence and infinite non-existence, which resulted in the creation of consciousness. All right, that's a quick look at the theory of consciousness. Now let's take a very quick look as to how this theory of consciousness can be used to form a theory of spiritual dynamics. Spiritual dynamics would be explaining spiritual advancement. As we have seen, the human brain recreates the universe's creation process. Existence emerges from a singularity, just like at the time of the Big Bang. And existence emerges, as we know, originally from the transcendent infinite realm. So that entails that there implies that the brain's connection with infinite existence is possible. And it's this connection with infinite existence, which is how we're originating our consciousness, gives humans their spiritual nature. And it's interesting that Buddhism stresses the importance of connecting with the void, of course, what I'm proposing is where existence particles emerge. The void is like a black hole inside of space-time. And Meher Baba stresses the importance of realizing the nothingness of the universe, the non-existence of the universe. And it's through the void that our consciousness is generated. And it is through our consciousness that it's possible to know, see, and become one with infinite existence, or God. So this has been a very quick overview, and we can see that each of these theories feed into the other theories. And I thank you for listening. And for those of you who are interested in knowing more, I can direct you to my website, richblum.net. And there you can find articles, other presentations I've made, a link to my book, The Architecture of the Universe, as well as an email link if you wish to contact me. All right, well, thank you very much.